Good morning. Good morning, my colleagues, dear colleagues. Maybe we can start. We have a lot of new faces here. Thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. If there are no objections, the agenda is adopted. No objections, thank you. So we go to the point 3, adoption of minutes. The minutes of the PECH committee meeting held on 3rd of June 2026 are in your files. If there are no objections, these minutes are adopted. Perfect. I know that you want to vote immediately. Let's go. So let's pass to the 5th point of our agenda, the electronic vote establishing. Today's only vote concerns the PECH opinion on the European Fund for Economic, Social and Territorial Cohesion, Agriculture and Rural Fisheries and Maritime, Prosperity and Security 2028-2034. Our opinion will feed into the very relevant EU regulation determining how the money of the future multi-annual financial framework will be spent. Mr. André Franqueiro Rodrigues is the rapporteur for this opinion. The draft opinion represented in our PECH meeting in April, and 453 amendments were tabled. Thanks to the efforts of the rapporteur, the shadows and of their respective teams, 12 compromise amendments have been concluded. So let us move directly to the vote. Let's reserve cards. So we'll start with amendment 123. Who votes in favor? By show of hands. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Amendment 124. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Amendment 125 and Amendment 7. They are identical. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 126. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? I think it's about to check. The vote is open. I close the vote.
It's rejected.
It's rejected, a draw. Let's pass to compromise amendment 1. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. We pass to compromise 2. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. We jump to compromise amendment 152. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise 0. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. We pass now to compromise or amendments. Compromise 3. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 226. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise amendment 4. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 233. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise amendment 5. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Now we pass to amendment 254. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? I would like to check. I open the floor. I open the vote. I close the vote. It is adopted. Compromise, amendment 257. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. 258. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. 259. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise amendment 6. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 266. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise Amendment 7. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. We pass now to Amendment 308. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Let's check. I open the votes. I close the vote. It's rejected. A draw. Amendment 309. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise Amendment 8. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Now we pass to Amendment 350. Who votes in favor? Against? Let's check, please. I open the vote. I close the vote.
It was rejected.
It was rejected. Okay, so Compromise Amendment 9. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 384. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 385. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Let's check, please. I open the vote. I close the vote.
It's rejected.
Rejected. Amendment 386. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? I have to check also. I open the vote. I close the vote.
It's rejected.
Rejected. Amendment 387. Who votes in favor? Who votes against? Abstentions? I have to check again. So let's open the vote. I close the vote.
It's rejected.
It's rejected. Amendment 388. Who votes in favor? Who votes against? Abstentions?
I think it's also rejected.
It's
rejected also.
It's the same majority, yeah. It's rejected. 389. Who votes in favor? Who votes against? Let's check. 389. I open the vote. I close the vote.
It's adopted.
It's adopted. 390. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. 391. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. 392. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. 413. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. 414. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. 415. Votes in favor? Against? Okay. Abstentions? Okay, I think it was rejected. 416. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise Amendment 10. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Compromise Amendment 11. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Now we pass to Amendment 60. Who votes in favor? Against? 60. Favor? Sorry, let's repeat. In favor, Amendment 60. In favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. 70. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Compromise Amendment 12. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Now we pass to Compromise Amendment 13. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Now Amendment 72. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Amendment 73. Votes in favor? Against? Sorry, I will repeat. Amendment 73, votes in favor? Against? We have to check. I open the vote. I close the vote. It's adopted. Amendment 74, votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 84, votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Check? Okay, we will check. I open the vote. I close the vote.
It's rejected.
Rejected. This is 84?
Yeah, 87 now.
87, Amendment 87. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions?
It's not very clear.
Let's check, please. I open the vote.
87.
87. I close the vote. It is adopted. Amendment 88. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 1. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 2. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 3. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 96. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Adopted. Amendment 97. Votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Let's check. I open the vote.
97.
Amendment 97. I close the vote, and it is adopted. Amendment 99. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Amendment 108. Who votes in favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Amendment 112. In favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Amendment 113. In favor? Against? Abstentions? Rejected. Amendment 121 and Amendment 122, they are identical. We will vote together. Who votes in favor? Against? Let's check. I open the vote. I close the vote.
It's adopted.
It is adopted. Now we pass to the final vote as roll call vote. I open the vote. I close the vote.
Adopted.
Adopted.
By 17.
By 17 votes in favor and 8 abstentions. So the draft opinion has been adopted by 17 votes in favor, 0 against, and 9 abstentions. Congratulations to the rapporteur. I'll give you 30 seconds to start the next point in the agenda. Dear colleagues, thank you so much for your attention. Let us start our next point in our agenda, point 6, please. I ask you to go to your seats. So now we'll have the pleasure to welcome Mr. Martin Heydon, Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, for the traditional exchange with the incoming Council Presidency. The programme for the Irish Presidency rightly underlines the central role of fisheries in ensuring Europe's food security, strengthening economic competitiveness and sustaining our coastal communities while also contributing to the Union's climate and environmental objectives. The Irish Presidency also places strong emphasis on generational renewal and simplification as key drivers of competitiveness. These are all priorities that are regularly discussed in this committee, and we look forward for this exchange with the Irish Presidency. Dear Minister, I will give you the floor to outline the Presidency's priorities in the field of fisheries and aquaculture for this second part of the year. You will have more or less 10 minutes. It's a pleasure and a great honor to have you here with us. Minister, the floor is yours.
Paolo Alaska Hirlock, Gurav Mila Mahagud.
Thank you very much for your warm welcome. I would like to thank you for your welcome here. Good morning to everyone. It is a great honour for me as Chair to present the work programme of the Irish Presidency for the Agricultural and Fisheries Council for the next 6 months.
I want to state my commitment to delivery for fishermen and women, for our coastal communities and EU citizens who are custodians of our seas and oceans and who rely on sustainable fishing for their incomes. Ireland's presidency will be guided by the principle in Irish, as Gaeilge, we say, Níarca Cur le Chéile, in strength, which means strength with unity. At a time when the global environment is rapidly changing and uncertain, unity is ever more important. In that context, the work of the Irish Presidency will respond to the overall interests and needs of the Union, its Member States and citizens across Europe. That unity also means an Irish Presidency that is ready and willing to work constructively and in good faith with the European Parliament as co-legislators to deliver for Europe. The Irish Presidency will be defined by action and delivery. We will be guided by 3 overarching themes. On competitiveness, we will work towards fostering prosperity and well-being, understanding that a Europe which is serious about competitiveness must also be serious about the viability of fisheries, farm, food and seafood businesses. On values, we will uphold the indispensable foundation of our Union, recognising that a Europe which is serious about rural and coastal communities must ensure European policy supports the people and places that sustain these communities. And on security, we will work towards protecting our citizens. Our experiences over recent years have taught us that global food systems and global food supply chains cannot be taken for granted. If Europe is serious about security, it must also be serious about food security. These core themes are closely interlinked, mutually reinforcing, and will guide all aspects of our work throughout our presidency. We have a full work programme across fisheries files. We anticipate proposals on amendments to the multi-annual plans regulations and MFAF regulation. We also anticipate progressing the discussions on conditions for EU support to the common fisheries policy. We anticipate a significant workload from September onwards, leading up to the annual fishing opportunities discussions in October, November and December. We also anticipate the proposal on the autonomous tariff quotas, the ATQs regulation, and a successful conclusion on the European Fisheries and Aquaculture Statistics file. In addition, we are planning for discussion around the Commission's forthcoming Vision 2040 for Fisheries and Aquaculture, Energy Transition Roadmap and the external dimension communication. Throughout the Irish Presidency semester, we will focus on generational renewal, as Paolo said in his introduction, and that will be across both fisheries and agriculture. We will address this significant workload with determination, in the understanding that what we deliver as a presidency matters and directly impacts EU citizens. In relation to our priorities, pursuing agreement on the new EU budget is an overarching priority for the Irish Presidency, and the next multi-annual financial framework, MFF, needs to support our rural coastal communities. It must enhance competitiveness across fisheries and aquaculture, provide opportunity to small and medium-sized businesses, as well as support economic, social and territorial cohesion. Ireland is committed to the ambition that the next MFF will have the capacity to transform Europe for the better in the decade ahead. The CFP remains the key framework for ensuring the sustainability of Europe's seafood sector. The conditions for the implementation of the Union support to the CFP, the European Ocean Pact, and of the Union Maritime and Aquaculture Policy 2028 to 2034 is a priority file for the Irish Presidency. We will continue the hard work undertaken by the Cyprus Presidency with the objective of agreeing on a partial general approach in the autumn. The Council will stand ready for interinstitutional negotiations to start quickly once the Parliament is ready. In all of this, the Irish Presidency's aim is to ensure that conditions and rules are fit for the challenges ahead and that they are simple to apply for all stakeholders. Once a proposal on the amendment of the MFAF is tabled by Commissioner Cadis, the Irish Presidency will engage constructively with the European Parliament so that we can deliver together in the shortest term and the support and flexibility Europe's seafood industry needs to continue operations in a changing environment and global context. The Irish Presidency's key priority will be the successful conclusion of discussions on the 2027 fishing opportunities, so that we can provide much-needed certainty for EU fleets in 2027. Leading up to October Agri-Fish Council, we will focus our efforts on securing political agreement in respect of fishing opportunities in the Baltic Sea. At the same time, we will work constructively towards political agreement in December Agri-Fish on the annual TAC and quota regulations for the Atlantic and North Sea and the Mediterranean and Black Seas. Most EU fish stocks in the North East Atlantic are now shared with other coastal states, predominantly the United Kingdom and Norway. Good cooperation and mutual understanding between the Union and third countries is in the best interest of our fishing sector and I believe essential for the sustainable joint management of our shared fish stocks. While the European Commission has sole competence to negotiate on behalf of the EU in third country negotiations, in these discussions the Irish Presidency will seek to constructively coordinate Member States' positions to provide for the sustainable management of shared stocks and a level playing field for EU fleets. In terms of multi-annual plans, or the MAPs, the Council has asked the Commission to present a proposal to amend 3 northern maps as regards the so-called 5% rule, and the Western Mediterranean map, the WestMed, as regards mixed fisheries opportunities. Once Commission proposals are tabled, the Irish Presidency will do its utmost to progress as quickly as possible to ensure the swift adoption of such an important regulation. In relation to the joint transposition of the Regional Fisheries Management Organisation measures, the proposed amendments concern 7 regulations for 6 RFMOs. The aim of the proposal is to ensure that the EU's obligations in these RFMOs are met without going beyond what is necessary to achieve the RFMO's objectives. The Irish Presidency is committed to advance as much as possible with this proposal during its presidency term, ultimately to agree on a Council mandate for negotiations with European Parliament and possibly to start interinstitutional negotiations. Moving on to external relations, Sustainable Fisheries Partnership Agreements, SFPAs, are an essential part of the Common Fisheries Policy. The Council is favourable to extending the Union's network of SFPAs on the basis of a thorough evaluation of the interests of the respective parties. However, the cost of the agreements must be proportionate to the benefits for EU fleets. For the renewal of these agreements and protocols, the Irish Presidency stands ready to facilitate in the Council and to support the Commission in negotiations so that the new text can be agreed upon promptly. Following publication of the Commission's report on its evaluation of the Common Fisheries Policy Regulation, Ireland's Presidency will reflect on the outcomes of the evaluation and the next steps. Central to this work will be the consideration of how the Union can sustainably develop its fisheries and aquaculture sectors and ensure that the important role of these sectors is appropriately reflected in decisions taken at European level, including the 2040 Vision for Fisheries and Aquaculture. Competitive potential and economic opportunity for European fishers and aquaculture producers rely on clean, resilient oceans and healthy seas. The Irish Presidency will proactively engage in discussions around the European Ocean Pact to ensure that the Union's unified approach to ocean is cognizant of all users. As was noted by the European Council on the 18th and 19th of June, the Commission has recently presented a strategy on resilient, prosperous and livable coastal communities. Supporting coastal and island communities is one of the priorities of the European Ocean Pact, as you will be aware. While the Council has not had the opportunity yet to analyse and discuss the proposed strategy in more detail, we acknowledge that it is timely to consider the challenges faced by 95 million people from major port towns to isolated fishing communities in 22 member states. In conclusion, the informal meeting of the Fisheries Ministers will take place in our own County Cork in the south of Ireland on the 28th and 29th of July. Paolo, we look forward to welcoming you there as part of the delegation from this committee. We look forward to that, being able to attend.
I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present the Irish Work Programme for the Agriculture and Fisheries Council. I am looking forward to working in close cooperation with the Parliament and with this committee in the coming months. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. And it will be a pleasure for our committee to be represented, and thank you for the invitation. Now I'll give the floor to members, beginning with the coordinators of the political groups, and then in the second round I'll give the floor to other members that wish to intervene. So I'll give the floor for 3 minutes to Mrs. Kalnek from EPP. The floor is yours.
Merci, Président. Merci. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your presentation and your ambitions for European fisheries. We are expecting a lot from this presidency because the Irish are in a good place to understand how important fisheries and aquaculture are to the food security of the Union. The previous presidency allowed headway to be made on several fronts, a general assessment of the CFP and ongoing dialogue to increase the fisheries budget for 28 through 34. And we're starting to see the outline of what could be an oceans law. Following the evaluation, our committee will be working on a resolution which is going to stress simplification, which has been promised to us by Commissioners Dombrovskis and Cadiz. Moderating the fleet, we have to review the power and capacity. It's about decarbonisation, safety on board, and the attractiveness of the profession. It's not about fishing more, but about fishing better. The requirement to land, we have to work on the selectivity of gear rather than imposing disconnected or requirements disconnected from reality. On the multi-annual management plans, we need to revise that to avoid excessive variations from one year to the next, particularly in the Mediterranean, to take better account of factors which influence resources and therefore on landings. Fisheries cannot be held responsible for the poor state of certain stocks because it's also a victim of that. We also have to guarantee a level playing field vis-à-vis third countries that don't respect the same environmental, social and health standards as our European fishers. on the 2028-34 budget with a 4.5 billion. We're still not there, but we have just virtually unanimously adopted the Fisheries Committee's opinion on national plans, and I would invite you to take note of that. And to come back to the budget, I think it would be useful to very quickly have the evaluation of the MFF that we're waiting for, because it would help us prioritise our responses to the sector and have an appropriate performance regulation. We are also convinced that fisheries and agriculture should be able to enjoy or use the competitiveness fund. We have adopted a report on the MSP, which will be the basis for our requests. Ireland hopefully will be working on marine protected areas with an approach which is close to the Commissioner's heart on a case-by-case basis. Then you mentioned tax and quotas for the December Council. We are counting on Ireland to protect the interests of European fishers. Decisions taken last year, I'm thinking of mackerel, left their mark. And then last but not least, as a standing rapporteur on Brexit, I would personally like us to work, you mentioned this, with Ireland to help our relations with the UK and Norway. So thank you in advance.
Madam Kalnek, now I pass the floor to the S&D coordinator, Mr. Rodrigues. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Senhor Ministro, começo naturalmente por...
Mr. Minister, of course, on behalf of the S&D, I would like to wish you the very best for your presidency, for your 6 months. Of course, it's always a pleasure to work together with member state governments, and concerning fisheries, that's even more applicable because for Ireland, you're an ocean-going country just like Portugal, so very much aware of the necessity of protecting the oceans. And these are really the conditions for the MFF for 2028 to 2034. We really have inherited, of course, this from the Cyprus presidency. And we're going to have a much lower budget than being proposed by the Commission, and much less than is actually necessary in order to address the complex challenges facing us. In April, we had our interim report approved, 1.39 billion euros, and that meant 23% of the GMP of the Union in order to address proper financing for the EU. And concerning fisheries, it's a very difficult situation indeed concerning funding. The 2 billion euros were foreseen for the CAPF under the regional partnership programs. And the S&D in this committee believes that we should be fighting against this massive reduction, because we should have our own plan besides the cohesion and agriculture funds. So I've been a rapporteur, and here we have a willingness to see much more being paid, 1.5 billion under the heading of Global Europe, and that would be allocated for the SFPAs and also for the Pact, Ocean Pact. So, a direct question from me. What do you intend to do during your presidency in order to ensure the future financing of the CFP? And secondly, how do you evaluate the situation as presented by the Commission? Minister, we know this is going to be a marathon indeed. So we have to know that Ireland is going to be supporting the regions, that we're all rowing in the same direction together. And that's where we're going to have great expectations with our common work and cooperation and the challenges facing the presidency. in the next 6 months. Thank you.
I will pass the floor to ECR coordinator, Mr. Bartolika. The floor is yours for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak in Croatian. So, gospodine ministre.
Welcome, Minister. Welcome to the European Parliament. I can say that I agree, at least in principle, with the priorities that you have outlined for the presidency. I come from Croatia and I have some specific questions. We are all aware of the fact that Europe imports about 70% of the fish consumed in the European Union. 70%. This means that there is no balance between sustainability and the protection of our fishermen, and I think that the fishermen are suffering here. This has to be changed now. I would like to know what measures will the Irish presidency introduce, and especially for the Adriatic. Croatian fishermen are faced with more and more barriers, higher costs, and yet they have to remain competitive. We talk about it a lot, but there is little change. In the priorities of the presidency, how do you plan to take into account the specific challenges faced by the fisheries in the Adriatic? Small bluefish, invasive species. The regulations that cannot be put into action, especially our legislation from 2006, are great problems for us. You also said that you will devote a lot of attention to the issues related to food security, and we fully agree with that. However, what measures do you plan to introduce into the fisheries and aquaculture sector in order to preserve competitiveness, availability and security of our food supply? We also need administrative burden to be much, much lesser, and we also need a regenerational plan for action. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I'll pass the floor to the coordinator of Renew, Mrs. Weisner. The floor is yours for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much, Minister, for being here. The upcoming 6 months will be important for the European fisheries, and I believe that the Irish presidency agenda, strengthened with unity, resonates very well in this PECH committee. Fisheries, it's not a niche sector, it's one of the Union's core common policies, and getting the matters right for our oceans and for the people who depend on them is indeed also a key priority for this committee. Hey, here I am. I have 3 political questions for you and then one on the process. First of all, the evaluation of the common fisheries policies. From Renew point of view, we would really like to see some concrete actions on several issues that the evaluation points at. There is no point on evaluating if you have no intention in follow-up and do something differently. So my first question is, what steps will the Irish presidency take to put pressure on the Commission to deliver action on the CFP evaluation findings, and in particular, how to make the landing obligation work in the upcoming months? So first, CFP. Second of all, one of the most tangible deliverables of the presidency are the fishing opportunities for 2027. We need fair outcome based on science and long-term trajectories, not the least for the Baltic Sea. So my second question is, how aware are you of the very delicate and critical situation that the Baltic Sea is in? And what will you do to protect the Baltic Sea? We have taken concrete measures and actions here in this House as Parliament. We pointed out the evaluation of the Baltic Sea map. But so far, very little has been done. And to be very blunt and honest, a lot of things actually get worse when they end up in Council. So how do you tend to change that? Thirdly, how will the presidency ensure that the EU position in the EU-UK and EU-Norway, the annual consultations, adequately protect the Union's fisheries interest, particularly given the continued asymmetry in the access and efforts. So the external dimension of the fishing policies, we see how much pressure and the tensions are growing in the relations EU-UK, but also EU-Norway. But I think we should also add Iceland to that list as a potential opportunity. So the external dimension. And finally, my fourth question is more of a procedural-wise. Now you've got 3 questions on the policies. But procedural-wise, now we are working on the vision for the 2040 fisheries and aquaculture. My question is, how do you intend to work as presidency to continue the debate with this parliament and make us a part of the discussions and the equation? Can you commit to set up a dedicated structured dialogue with parliament when this vision is also discussed in council? Parliament would very much be part of it, and we truly want to work together on this strategic and long-term topic. So how procedure-wise do you intend to work with us as parliament? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Wiesner. Now I pass the floor to the coordinator of Greens, Mrs. Lava. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome, Minister, to this committee. Well, on the kind of long-term needs of European fisheries and the ocean, you mentioned the multi-annual plans, that was one of the priorities to get rid of the 5% rule of the maps. My question, I was the rapporteur of the multi-annual plan for the Baltic Sea implementing report, and I wonder if you have seen it, if you've read it, and if you will heed the call of the European Parliament to implement security buffers, automatic measures when stocks fall below certain levels, to apply the precautionary approach and the ecosystem approaches, and to pause trawling for fish meal and fish oil. Because as my colleague Wiesner just said, the Baltic Sea is in a really, really urgent state, and this is not me saying this, this is the HELCOM committee, and its Secretary General gave the diagnosis of the Baltic Sea as being a dying patient. And if we don't do exactly everything we can do in order to get it healthy again, it will be too late. So I think the focus on getting rid of the 5% rule, and the 5% rule is if there's more than 5% risk of a stock collapsing, then we should not be fishing at all. And I think that's very high risk. And I wonder if the Council agrees on that and also agrees that the fish stocks and the ocean is a public asset. It does not belong to the fishing sector. It does belong to citizens and to the future. So I also wonder the rebuilding trajectory, because the Council agreed on that in October, to ask ICES for a rebuilding trajectory for the Baltic Sea. And we haven't seen any such advice yet. Will the Irish presidency make sure that we have that advice ahead of the tax and quotas negotiation in October for the Baltic Sea, so that we really can apply that, because it's really, really urgent. Now, lastly, on the Ocean Act, this is a really opportunity for a paradigm shift to end the fragmentation of different marine and ocean policies at the EU level. But we need the Council to really take leadership and prepare for an ambitious Ocean Act. So this is also a question to you. Will you gather the relevant ministers in order to have a really in-depth discussion on the possibilities and the real opportunities that this presents to have a new Ocean Act at the EU level? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Levin. Now, on behalf of the Left Group, I'll give the floor to Mr. Flanagan for 3 minutes, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Fáilte Arisha Warchin. My focus today is on the challenges faced by small-scale fisheries in the European Union, including the challenge of generational renewal, which you talk about. We're never going to overcome the obstacle unless our young people have certainty that they can access the resource. As you're no doubt aware, a key finding of the recent evaluation of the CFP is that small-scale fishers in the EU face persistent challenges in accessing fishing opportunities. Ireland is a very good example of this, where access to fishing opportunities still depends, in many cases, on being able to show a track record of catching certain species. This is an impossible condition to fulfil for a new entrant, and it favours large boats, not the smaller boats under 12 metres that make up 76% of the EU fleet and almost 88% of the Irish fleet. The lack of fair and equitable allocation of fishing opportunities to small-scale fishing is another reason impeding generational renewal in the EU. Article 17 of the CFP gives national authorities the power to change this, but has not been properly implemented. This is another key finding of the CFP evaluation, and I'll quote it. The main challenge is not the CFP rules themselves, but inconsistent implementation and enforcement across EU member states. It really worries me that the new financial architecture proposed by the Commission merges MFAF. It really worries me that the new financial architecture proposed by the Commission merges MFAF, our standalone fisheries funding programme, into the National, Regional and Partnership Fund, and give Member States a lot more discretion. This opens the door for national governments to sideline small-scale fisheries even more. It might sound impossible given what they're going through already. Europe's small-scale fish producer organisations already struggle to access funding under MFAF, which is at the discretion of national authorities to administer. Once again, Ireland provides, sadly, an excellent example. Our two small-scale producer organisations fought hard to gain recognition in 2021 and 2023, and they still cannot access funding to operationalise their production and marketing plans. As part of your independent chairing of Council meetings during the Irish Presidency, will you commit to prioritising the challenges I have outlined above to facilitate access to fishing opportunities and generational renewal within the EU small-scale fishing industry, which is the lifeblood of so many EU coastal and island communities? And I also have to ask you, and this is very worrying, what kind of message do you think it sends out to the Ireland's fishing industry when it has been recently reported that you, and not Minister Dooley, our dedicated Minister for Fisheries and the Marine, will be leading negotiations on fisheries matters in the Agri-Council meeting during the Irish Presidency? I have met Minister Dooley. He has shown a really good knowledge of this subject, and it's a pity that he can't be here. And I also have to say, fair dues to the members who turn up. We have no member of the Irish government who is an MEP here today, and I think it'll tell you how seriously they take fishing. I think it's a bloody disgrace. Not one MEP from Ireland here,
Mr.
bar
Flanagan.
myself,
Please, let's,
and I don't even live beside the sea.
Thank you so much, Mr. Flanagan.
Unbelievable.
Now, to reply, Minister Heydon, there is a lot of questions, and I'll give you the floor to reply for maximum 8 minutes, I think. I know it's not fair, but it's 8 minutes, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for a wide range, in-depth range of questions, which I'll now go through in the order in which they were asked, and to try and give an overview of our approach to the topics that you raise so passionately. Starting MEP Kalanick, thank you for your comments. Both you and other MEPs, including Franquero Rodriguez, mentioned the MFF and the overall budget. It does get to the heart of so much of what we want to achieve in the next 7 years, and is critical to everything that we do. And while I, as chair of the Agri-Fish Council, don't have direct responsibility for the MFF negotiations, it is a key priority of the Irish Presidency. And there is, we know, a large expectation that at European Council level and at the top level we will make very significant progress on the MFF. I referenced in my opening speech the ambition to reach a partial general approach on many elements throughout our presidency. Obviously, until the MFF is agreed, you have brackets and you can't get the full general approach. So across every council, across every issue, we require clarity on the MFF, and we are very aware of that in our presidency, and it is a key focus for us across government and across this presidency as the honest broker. You also raised, along with other colleagues, including Franquero Rodriguez, MEP Barticula and MEP Flanagan, the issue of generational renewal. At MEP Flanagan, you asked, will I take on board the points and the priorities you raised? Generational renewal gets to the heart of so many of the challenges we face. If so much of our discussions on next fishing opportunities are about future stocks and sustainability, and you would have heard me yesterday speak at the Agri Committee around the three elements of sustainability, which are as true for fisheries as they are in any other sphere of economic, social and environmental. Everything we do, and if we can get our policies right, it will aid generation renewal. So to that point, it is a key focus of our presidency, and for the fisheries sector, for our informal, which will be held in Cork at the end of this month, generational renewal will be the key theme of the discussion at that informal debate, showing the priority that I intend to place on that. And also, MEP Kalanick, your point about being standing rapporteur on Brexit, obviously we understand, that relationship with third countries, while negotiated solely by the Commission, Ireland's role here is to coordinate the response of Member States on Council. And we are well placed in Ireland to understand the benefits of a close working relationship in that regard. So I thank you for your comments on that. MEP Rodriguez highlighted that this is a marathon, and I would be very much in agreement. This is not a sprint, although the 4.5 months, if you take out August and Christmas, will be a very intensive period throughout the 6 months of our presidency. It is a marathon, and we will be running hard in December as much as we are today in July. But he did ask that we would all be rowing together, and we in Ireland are very proud of our Olympic medals in rowing, so I can guarantee you we will all row well and row hard together. And similarly, the points that he raised around the MFF and the next generation, I've addressed in that regard. What was it? Yes. Isabella, you also referenced energy transition, and the Council recognised the need for energy transition in the fishing fleet. The Council anticipates the publication of an energy transition plan as an annex to the Vision 2040, and the Council looks forward to the publication of this important document. So in terms of MEP Barticula, thank you for your point around our priorities and the points on the Adriatic Sea as well. As Presidency, Ireland will coordinate with all of the concerned Member States to ensure the Commission strongly pursues the theme of compliance with the rules laid down for shared fisheries in the Adriatic, and the upcoming meeting in September will be the first step in that regard. So we take on board the points you raise around the Adriatic, how important that is for Croatia and other Member States. And we will be that honest broker in the chair in addressing the issues that you outline and the concerns that you outline regarding the Adriatic. And from the points around food security, in terms of the MFF and the negotiations on the budget we have, I've articulated on a number of occasions that I'm very keen that in any debates around increased spending and desire for member states on defence, which I understand in terms of that threat posed by a whole range of different elements of defence discussion and security now, from cyber to hybrid and all the rest, I'm really keen that we don't end up in a situation where the debate is security and defence, CFP, CAP over here. Food security is an integral part of that discussion around defence. The EU is predominantly a peace project, and our focus on food and supporting our CFP and the CAP over the last number of decades in the EU spoke directly to that. We know hunger is the greatest cause of conflict in the world. So when the conversation is happening in the budget around security and defence, I'm on the record as saying regularly food security needs to be an integral part of that discussion and that debate because it is so important. And sustainable stocks supports food security, because food security isn't just for today or tomorrow. It is that longer term, and it's the key theme of the CFP and the work of the Council in that regard. On the points raised, I'll go to my next page. MEP Lovin raised a number of points around the Baltics, as did MEP Weisner, and thank you for that. We look forward to the Commission's proposal to amend the Westmed and alter other multi-annual plans. We understand the priority many of you place on the Baltic Sea. You've articulated the concerns and the environmental reports to date and its wider context. We will have more, better advice for the year ahead, but there is more to be done in that regard. And in many of these cases, the point was raised around the ISIS and the proposals that will be coming and how we will deal with that. The ISIS processes aren't a matter directly for the Presidency. We have to respect its independence. It's science-based, and of course, and we will examine the Commission's proposals in the manner, and the Council always examines that. But we stand ready to deal with and work closely with the Commission with any outcome in that regard. MEP Weisner also talked about the EU, UK, Norway, Iceland and beyond, and the Icelandic people have government have proposed a referendum in August, so we'll leave that to them. And if they do sign up to that, then we stand ready to engage and work on a mutually beneficial approach in that regard. And that's an important part of that. Yeah, MEP Lovan raised the Ocean Pact. The Irish Presidency will proactively engage in discussions around the European Ocean Pact to ensure the Union's unified approach to oceans is cognisant of all users. I understand that the Commission's ambition is to table a draft Ocean Act by the year end for discussion at the General Affairs Council. And finally, Luke Ming, you raised, obviously I answered the points on generation renewal earlier. You talked about your concern with the MFAP as part of the NRPP. At the Council for the last 17 months when I've been there, we talked about ideally there would be evolution of policy as opposed to revolution, and the NRPP feels more like revolution. It's a very big change, after a very big change that we had in 2023. But there's a need for that in terms of the broader policy, and we have to deal with that. And the time will come as the Senior Cabinet Minister for Fisheries in Ireland, no more than every other Minister for Fisheries, there will be a time for a national debate where there'll be a cabinet table, and I'll be looking at other Irish ministers across the table and making sure I'll have to have sharp elbows and fight to corner the fisheries sector, like I do whenever fisheries items comes up on the agenda. And to that point, that you raised about Minister Dooley, I am the Senior Minister for Fisheries. I raise it and represent it at Cabinet, and I work really closely with Minister Dooley. Minister Dooley will be at all Council meetings in the Irish Chair, and obviously in the Presidency, obviously, we are the honest broker, where Minister Dooley's role at delegated functions continue from the day-to-day element of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Minister. And now I'll give the floor to other members that wish to speak, and we will start by Mr. Milan Mun. the floor is yours for 1.5 minutes, please.
Gracias, Presidente. Ministro, celebro.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, I've understood that one of your main objectives is to strengthen fisheries, competitiveness of fisheries and aquaculture, to ensure food security and the prosperity of coastal communities. A lot of that hinges on fisheries. So I know that the second half of the year is always hard work in a presidency for those involved in fisheries. But I've got various points I'd like to raise. To begin with, the MFF. As you know, that the cuts brought in by the Commission are totally unacceptable. And we have tried, we've had a massive vote in this body to increase that. Now, there was a 4,000 million presented by the previous presidency, but that's far from being enough. And please work towards adequate funding for fisheries and aquaculture. You're talking about rowing. Yes, I know. We're not looking behind us. We're looking forward as well. We're looking at fisheries that we want to have a future, and so we're counting on you for that. Simplification. Well, for you, I think it's key, but it's going to be key to the fishing world as well. We haven't been convinced by the Commission's approach yet, and I hope that you will work with us and push the Commission to table some proposals for multi-annual plans, particularly for the Mediterranean, which it's urgent there. But then there's a couple of things that you mentioned. We have to amend the deep water regulation, and on the question of bottom trawling as well, that needs to be addressed. And the omnibus for simplification, we should use that to amend certain very specific issues in the control regulation. Reform of the CFP, you were saying that it needs thought. Well, we would urge you really to get that reform underway. Don't think too much. Just we have to reform it and get on with it. It's time. The thinking time is over. It's time to act. Thank you.
Floor to Mr. Heydon. The floor is yours for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, and it's very good to see you again, Minister. I know it's a very difficult task to go to 3 different committees in 24 hours, but it's good to see you, and it would be better if I get answers to my questions. So, generation renewal. I heard many times that it's a priority, but I would like to listen to what are the specific actions that the Presidency is going to take to ensure support. It's good that it's a priority, but priorities remaining on paper are useless. And I want to ask if you see the potential of flexibility on state aid to transfer vessels from older fishers to younger fishers as one of the possible actions. Not state aid for energy prices, but state aid to transfer vessels, just like happening in the agricultural sector. Secondly, level playing field, extremely important, especially in the Mediterranean. I understand that you come from a northern country, but I must stress the importance of the Mediterranean, and under your presidency, you will be preparing for both ICAT and GFCM. I heard you say that you will want to coordinate with member states. I want to stress that this Parliament will eventually need to, with co-decision, put into EU law whatever you decide in the Council, and then whatever you negotiate in the RFMO. So it's extremely important that you listen to the Parliament always. I'm not asking you to do more than the treaties allow, but you need to listen to what this committee is saying and is stressing about, especially when it comes to non-sustainable fishing and IUU fishing in the Mediterranean. The situation is very difficult, and I want to ask if you are looking at the revised non-sustainable fishing regulation that was done last year as a credible deterrent for all of this. And to close, Chair, I am the rapporteur of the RFMO Omnibus. I heard what your intentions are. Look forward to work with you in that respect to advance the file and also to sign off the file of the previous RFMO Omnibus. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I pass the floor to Mr. Ritten. The floor is yours for 1.5 minutes, please.
Dank u wel, voorzitter. Meneer de minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, Minister. Fisheries, of course, is facing great challenges. It's important that the presidency ensures predictability and sustainability of the future. I have three questions. First of all, the evaluation of the CFP that is now available. And so we've looked at the deficiencies presented in the report, so that's why I think it's important that we get a proposal. We expect that the Commission will present that proposal so that the CFP can be adjusted. Are you going to support us in that? Is it also your opinion that we need to have a simplification package as well? A simplification omnibus is necessary for the CFP. Second question, MFF. We've heard very clear point of view from the Parliament. We want at least 7.29 billion for the fisheries. The 2 billion is simply not sufficiently. Do you support our request for funding for the fisheries? Are you going to support the Parliament in this? What's going to happen in the Council when you allocate funds for fisheries? I can imagine that the Council will not agree to that. And finally, fishing opportunities. And we're looking at tax and quotas. It's always very interesting for the fishing community when those are established. Are you ready to work with multi-year quotas so we can have stability and continuity for our fishers?
Thank you so much. Now I pass the floor to Mrs. Yann Cortin for 1.5 minutes. The floor is yours, Vice Chair.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Minister, dear Martin, the Irish presidency is arriving at a strategic moment for the future of European fisheries because we're fighting to ensure an appropriate budget to support fisheries under the new MFF. And we want the Commission to go further than a simple evaluation of the CFP and comes up with a reform as quickly as possible. We need your support. You'll have seen this in our battles. And I'm happy to see that your presidency has clear priorities for supporting fishers and professionals who work at sea. There are 4 points I'd like to mention. Firstly, the Commission hinted at the fact that a targeted revision will be presented. Are you in favour of this? You talked beforehand about using funds which weren't used between 21-28 and facilitate access to financing to respond to all the emergencies in the fisheries sector in our regions. And then our fishers, Irish and French ones in particular, in the Channel are still facing repercussions as a result of Brexit. Do you think we should investigate whether the measures recently adopted by the UK and Jersey, extending marine protected areas without any consultation, represent a violation of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement? Also, is the Irish presidency in favour of in-depth regionalisation of the CFP, depending on the specific features of each area, particularly the 12 marine miles limit to protect our fishers? In areas such as mine in Normandy, our fishers don't want promises anymore. They're expecting action. Mr. Minister, dear Martin, it's a pleasure to work with you and to see you once again. I hope we'll be working hand in hand as we did in 2019 when in our respective roles we twinned 2 of our towns, mine in Normandy and Kilcullen in Kildare. It was a really lovely thing to do, and I hope that we're going to be able to continue to help each other.
Vice Chair, I will now pass the floor to Mr. Herbst. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The MFF has been mentioned a couple of times, and of course we are absolutely in this committee in favor of a sufficient and also strictly ring-fenced budget, as you've heard, but I want to also refer to some concrete issues concerning the MFF. We want some key articles transferred from the overarching NRPP regulation back to the sectoral regulation where they practically and also legally belong. And I know that the Council has been outspoken on this as well, so we do count on your support, and we need results on this. And also when it comes to, trying to prevent that this position is circumvented. For example, when it comes to legislation concerning the do no significant harm principle, you know that the guidance for instance, on DNSH needs to be, watched very closely in this regard, and we count on Council to support this, and we will support you and the Irish Presidency in demonstrating the same commitment to structural coherence and also financial guarantees.
Thank you so much. Now I'll pass the floor to Mr. Anatoglou. The floor is yours for 1.5 minutes, please.
I will speak in Greek.
Mr. Minister, I was really interested to listen to your priorities, but I have to admit that both myself and my Maltese colleague next to me felt that this was an agenda looking more to the North-East Atlantic. You made references to the UK, Norway, Baltic, the North Sea, but the Mediterranean, it has very specific features and is under a lot of pressure, and small-scale fisheries, which is a reality for thousands of fishers, allow me to say, has been left on the sidelines almost completely. And I hope that in practice the Irish Presidency will really take a fair approach to all of the areas, not only the north, because there's no time to lose anymore. The EU has to effectively protect our resources and our seas from against third countries. We face that in Greece from Turkey. It's not possible for European fishers to respect strict legislation, whereas third countries don't. So I think that there has to be clear support for small-scale and coastal fisheries, particularly those in distant regions where fisheries is a central pillar of the economy and indeed of social cohesion. So it's clearly we're seeing other problems as well, for example, with the invasion of the puffer fish. Now, are you planning to do something to support fishers in that with funds? It's not only a threat to fishers, but also to swimmers, and it's giving rise to huge losses. So the Greek government has only supported 2 regions so far where the problem has become particularly serious. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I pass the floor to Mr. Smith from ECR. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome again, Your Excellency. We already spoke in yesterday's Environmental Committee as well. I welcome the Irish Presidency's commitment to competitiveness, simplification and food security. These are the right political priorities for Europe's fisheries sector, and I also discussed them already with your colleague and Minister of State, Timmy Dooley. However, I'm struck by the lack of concrete fisheries initiatives in the Presidency programme. While your objectives are clear, it remains very unclear how they will be translated into legislative action. Over the last weeks, this committee has repeatedly called for progress on issues such as the evaluation of the CFP, revising the landing obligation, fleet modernisation, generational renewal, simplification, restoration of the fisheries fund in the MFF. Yet none of these files appear among the Presidency's priorities. Instead, the Irish Presidency, I quote, the Irish Presidency will reflect on the outcomes of the evaluation and next steps. We urgently need the fisheries omnibus, so initiatives to reduce unnecessary bureaucracy and improve the competitiveness of the sector. Ireland does too. Could you, on behalf of the Presidency, indicate which concrete fisheries dossiers and legislative and policy initiatives you intend to prioritise during your term, particularly regarding the CFP evaluation and, very concretely, the landing obligation?
Thank you so much for filling the time. Now I'll pass the floor to Mr. Christensen. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll speak Danish, please.
I also, a producer, my mother and father were fishers. So I just want to join with what Emma said about the North Sea, about the agreement with Norway, the agreement with the UK. That's incredibly important for Denmark. It's important to have that settled so the fishers know what they can expect in 2027. And I'm very insistent about simplification for fishers and for farmers. The simplification agenda is incredibly important. This landing obligation is simply a bureaucratic nightmare. And I really hope that you can do something about that. And finally, the part about having to have cameras. That's supposed to reduce bureaucracy, having cameras on vessels, but it's actually doing the opposite. So what are you going to do about that? And then we have a huge conflict about the sea bream in the North Sea and the UK. I hope you can knock down those British people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll pass the floor to Mr. Sagiacomo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Minister Martin, the Irish presidency is an opportunity to breathe new life into European fisheries. In negotiations on the next MFF, we have to defend a budget which matches our ambitions and the stakes in terms of maritime and food security. But we're not there yet. Our fishers need visibility, particularly regarding quotas. We can all remember the situation with mackerel. We have to invest, they have to invest, and we have to give confidence to younger generations. And this also has to strengthen coastal communities to make them strong, alive and attractive, a real pillar of our maritime areas. And then ecological transition will only be successful if it's a fair transition, a transition which protects the resource whilst guaranteeing a future for those people who live from the seas. Our collective responsibility is absolutely clear. We have to establish a policy which doesn't forget either fish or humans and which provides sustainability, resilience and vitality for our territories. You've understood from everything my colleagues have said what it's all about. We expect so much on fisheries from the Irish presidency, so please don't disappoint us.
Thank you so much. And now I'll pass the floor to Mrs. Miranda Paz. The floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Muito obrigada, Sr. Presidente. Muito obrigada também à Presidência.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. And I would also like to thank the Minister for being present today. I've been a member of Parliament and represent people who find fisheries very important and fishermen. Just like Ireland, I represent people of the Atlantic. And, of course, we have a very long history, a lot of experience, and many of our companies work very closely together with Irish companies. But fishery policies are also often discriminated against in our countries and among our citizens because the objectives aren't sufficiently ambitious. The fishing communities watch while communities are indifferent. They're not supporting their policies. For example, in Galicia, recently there were women who fish for seafood. They finally are going to get a social security contribution paid. This has been a long-term demand of ours, and the government in Galicia has never responded to this. So this is very important for us. The European policies politicians aren't simply not listening to us, not in Ireland, not in Brittany, not in Galicia. So we are members who are supporting and defending fisheries, those of us who are active in the fisheries. And we, of course, all want to protect the environment. And that's why I'm very happy that the Irish presidency said they have ambitious goals for fishery policies, because this is very important to protect the community.
Give one final comment from my side before I pass the floor to you, Minister. Well, you heard, and I have to reiterate questions regarding the next MFF. It's quite important that we have the ambition that the Parliament decided. We received with a very good spirit the increase of the budget from the nego box from the Cypriotic Presidency, and we urge you to continue this ambition. And inside of the next MFF, on the next creating also, maintaining also the MFAF, it is important for us, also we voted on this on our Parliament, to have a specific amount dedicated and protected for the outermost regions, and we call it POSEI fisheries. As we have POSEI for the agriculture, we also have POSEI fisheries, and we already voted also this possibility here at this House. So I urge you to look at these specific programs and specific regimes to take into account the regional specificities, and also we also debated here the local action groups, GAL, PECH. This is a quite important bottom-up approach. Secondly, I would like also to congratulate you on your vision of the 3 pillars of sustainability, environmental for sure, but also socio and economic ones. And I urge you also to, when allocated the tax and quotas on the next December, to take into account the 3 pillars of sustainability, because our fishermen, and also the pluriannuality, multi-annual fisheries possibilities, because our fishermen need predictability, stability, and at the same time to take into account their own conditions. Generation renewal also very important for us, and also the question of the renewal of the fleet. And in this case, the considerations based on gross tonnage and the power of the engines, I think it's updated, and we are not trying to increase the capacity of fishing, we are just trying to increase the security and the safety of our fishermen, and I think this should be also simplified, and I totally agree with the need of having an omnibus for fishing, the simplification package for fisheries. Finally, we have some issues like the catch IT that we are going to debate afterwards, and also the questions related with the landing obligations when they have to register, starting for 1 kilo, all the species that the fishermen caught, so it's quite an administrative burden for them, and we think that we should return to the previous one when we have this derogation below 50 kilos. And finally, just to highlight the importance of the marine protected areas and what we did in Azores, we just protected 30% of our sea as an MPA, 300,000 square kilometers, and it's important that the fisheries are not left behind. We are trying to compensate the fishers for their losses, and we managed to get private funding, public funding, and we are still stuck in the European Commission state aid procedure. So, Minister, a lot of issues for you to answer, and I'll give you the floor for a few minutes just to conclude, as long as you want, but to conclude and to close this debate. So the floor is yours, Minister.
Thank you, Paolo. 11 questions in a short time, so I will do my best to cover all of the points that have been raised. And again, thank you for the detailed engagement and passionate articulation of the points representing so many of the fishing and coastal communities in which are in your member states. First of all, MEP Milan Mon, thank you. Like so many today, you referenced the MFF, the budget. It is at the heart of everything we do. Recognise, Paolo, your comments of the progress in the Cyprus presidency with that nego box. Ireland now looks to progress the next nego box, and that will be a critical focus of our overall presidency, while not me. Adequate funding to support fisheries and aquaculture sector is a key component to support the sustainable future of European fishing and seafood sector. Economic, social and environmental sustainability are the key pillars of the common fisheries policy, and as an island nation this is something that we understand very well. So whether it's the Mediterranean or whether it's the North Sea or any other area in that space, we in Ireland as an island nation with so much of a coastal community dependent on fishing as that driver of economic activity in this space, we get it, we understand, and I commit that we will be that honest broker in negotiations between all of the competing demands. That's an important point to make that I take for granted, but I just want to put it on the record to make sure that everybody understands that as well. MEP Bajada, I struggled with it yesterday, struggled with it again today, but thank you again for making the time here where you highlighted generational renewal. You talked about the flexibility, you talked about the level playing field for the Mediterranean. I mentioned the Mediterranean equally as much in my speech as I did the North Sea. MEP Artonologlo, sorry, and I'm struggling with the name. Greece and Italy is just as important as Greece and Malta, or Italy, or Mediterranean in general, is just as important as any other area. I mentioned them equally in my speech. Let there be no doubt that the Mediterranean is something we have a very clear focus on and will work through in that regard. But you raised the point around really important that we listen to the Parliament. With the greatest respect, it's my third committee in 2 days. I am here, and while the nature of this format is you ask questions and I answer, what's a very important part of this process is I am also listening. And the points that have been raised here, it's not just about me giving an answer and saying it's taken on board the perspectives. I have been told key priorities by MEPs here today and yesterday. That's why I'm here. I'm listening as much as I'm talking. In Ireland, we have a phrase, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So while I answer your questions, take on board the value of this engagement goes way beyond me just answering questions. I hear you, and I hear the importance of the issues that you raise. And in terms of your role as rapporteur of the RFMO Omnibus, I look forward to engaging with you further also. Yep. So, MEP Rosan and Smith, you raised simplification and that point. So, whether as an omnibus or in another format, we look forward to proposals from the Commission. We want to make the rules as simple as possible, which is really clear, obviously, and our experience of implemented fishing policy as an island nation will stand to us. I am not the first minister to promise our fishing community simplification, and I think it's fair to say whether it's our fishermen and women or our farmers who have previously heard of promises of simplification, they've got something that they thought was different. And, you know, MEP Christensen highlighted the bureaucratic nature, and you highlighted the practical point around cameras on vessels, supposed to simplify things, but in experience can feel differently to fishermen and women on the boats. So from that perspective, we will bring that practical experience we have to try and ensure that a simplified approach genuinely does what it says on the tin and does deliver simplification. MEP Jan Curtin, from your small town in Normandy to Kilcullen, what you don't realise is Kilcullen is a small town in Ireland, in my constituency, of just 3,000 people, and it's where I went to school. So we are very closely connected with that twinning. That is very, very important. The reform of the CFP, you highlighted, along with a number of colleagues. And the Irish Presidency will continue to steer the political discussion for the future steps to be undertaken following the evaluation of the Common Fisheries Policy Regulation. The Irish Presidency will continue voicing the expectation for concrete proposals by the Commission to follow up on findings of the evaluation and on relevant discussions on Council. And can I make a broader general point? There's a number of very specific questions put to me that you would expect almost to go to a Commissioner. So I'm really clear on what my role is and our role is in the Presidency, as being that coordinator of the Council, of coordinating and reaching a combined approach of the Council of Ministers. And I'm also aware of what I don't have responsibility for. So, you know, if it is those third country engagements with the UK, with Norway and beyond, so to my colleague Christensen, who, if the interpretation was correct, said wants us to knock down the British people, was I think how it was quoted. I'm not sure if it was made exactly that way. I won't be dealing directly with the British people in those negotiations. I will be coordinating the Council's response and engagement with the Commission. So we do work closely with the Commission, without a doubt, but we don't do that negotiation. But I take the broader point of view on board, and again, we will be that honest broker in terms of those points. MEP Herbst raised the MFF as well, which I have outlined and come back to. And obviously I've touched on and answered regarding the Mediterranean, its impact for Greece and beyond, and its importance, which I absolutely respect. In terms of MEP Schmidt, again, thank you. Second day in a row we've engaged, and I've answered in terms of progress on the evaluation of the CFP in that regard. So next, Eric, you raised the points around fish and humans. You articulated very well, which I think synopsises the broader point around sustainability, that economic sustainability for the humans is directly linked to the sustainability for the fish and for the quotas. And in terms then of generation renewal, I've made the point, when I talk about sustainability in all its forms, it's not just for the fishermen of today and tomorrow that we need to get this right. That's so that there is sustainable fishing opportunities for that next generation to invest and to have a bright future in that regard. MEP Miranda's Paz, muchas gracias. I have only un poco español, so I very much appreciate the attempt of the Cúpula Focal from us. But fair to say, as an island nation on the Atlantic, we understand the importance of the Atlantic Ocean, and obviously the Oceans Pact feeds into that in terms of where that's at as well. And then to finalise, Paolo, I hear your points regarding the MPAs. Appreciate your comments around sustainability, generation renewal and beyond. And can I pick up on one point you made where you talked about certainty and safety? In our presidency, I am determined we have a discussion around safety, around the fact that we have fishermen and women who unfortunately lose their life in workplace incidents, and similar to agriculture, that safety element, it is a very dangerous job. I would like to see better coordination across member states in terms of how we count, how we analyse the scale of the problem. This, to me, is the social element of social sustainability. We have an unacceptably high amount of people who lose their lives in fishing incidents, and I think we all need to reflect on that and what are the contributors to it. And it comes back, it is absolutely linked to the budget. It is absolutely linked to generational renewal. You know, if we have more older fishermen and women because the next generation aren't taking on that business, that is a risk as well. So there will be times in the autumn in our presidency where I will lead a discussion around safety for both fishing and agriculture that I think we all need to reflect on. And I come at this from a perspective of, as a Minister of State in the last government, I had responsibility for farm and fishing safety. And I have grave concerns around the challenges we all face in that space. And I think it is a body of work that we would all benefit from putting a clear focus on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister. If there are no more interventions, no. So I would like to wholeheartedly thank Minister Heydon for having joined us this morning. And I wish him and all his team a very successful presidency. And the item is closed now. So thank you so much, Minister. And don't forget also the outermost regions that I referred to in my speech. Thank you.
I remember everybody equally. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Sorry,
dear
I'll give
President,
the floor to, yes, please.
can we make a picture all together?
Yes, I think. Yeah. With all together, you refer the coordinators?
With the MEPs.
All the MEPs?
Yeah, the MEPs and the ministers.
We'll have a short break for a picture. Who votes against? No one. So So maybe you can come, everybody here to the podium, or don't sir? Here in the podium. You can take it here in the podium. Dear colleagues, let us resume our session, please. So, now we pass for the next point, the next item in our agenda, the implementation of the PECH system for the electronic certification of important fisheries products in the European Union and the persisting challenges and ways forward. As you know, in January of this year, the PECH digital certification system has been introduced in the EU. This mandatory IT platform is aimed to modernize import controls for fishery products and combat illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. However, its introduction has been facing persisting implementation difficulties, with many stakeholders calling for urgent changes in order for the system to work better. I would like to welcome the Commission representative, Mrs. Carmen Preising, Director of DG Mare, that is with us today. Thank you so much for coming. And please, Mrs. Preising, you have the floor for about 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honourable members, good morning. Let me thank you, first of all, for adding this point, this important point on today's agenda. We've discussed PECH several times with the Council, and I think it's really important also to have regular discussions and updates in this committee. I will provide a short update on where we are with the implementation of the PECH system and with addressing comments and feedback received from Member States, the sector and third countries over the last month since the new provisions of the IUU regulation entered into force. And I would like to start by recalling a little bit of background on PECH. So you know that the IUU regulation is in force since 2008, so almost 30 years ago. And since then, PECH constitutes the most substantial revamp of the EU PECH certification scheme through its compulsory digitalization and expansion of the data requirements for imports of fisheries products. These changes, as you know, have been introduced in 2023 through the revised control regulation, which also amended the IUU regulation, and which has been adopted in co-decision by the Parliament and the Council. PECH is our first ever EU-wide real-time system to harmonise border controls across the EU. And I don't think it's exaggerated to say that it is a real game changer in import controls and for our anti-IUU policy more generally. It will allow the EU to much better protect its market, preventing products from IUU fishing ending on the EU market and on consumers' plates. And it will allow the EU to retain its global leadership in the fight against IUU fishing. Apart from that, PECH reflects the Commission's genuine effort and commitment to drive digitalization as a means to further simplification. And to add, PECH is also one of the flagships of the European Ocean Pact. So why did we introduce PECH? It is important to recall that PECH responds to various and repeated calls from the European Parliament, requests from stakeholders, and recommendations, strong recommendations of the European Court of Auditors, all of them calling on the Commission to strengthen its toolbox in the fight against IUU, including through digital PECH certificates. And this is what we've done, and we are grateful for the strong support by this House, who has always put the fight against IUU on top of its priorities, both during previous mandates and during this mandate. So now coming to the present, where are we now, today? The new digital PECH certificate started to apply on 10th of January this year and is compulsory for all imports of fishery products into the EU market. PECH has thus been operational for more than 6 months, or only 6 months, and during this period, more than 73,000 importer declarations have been validated already through PECH. Of course, it's clear it's a change to the previous system. An EU-wide system always implies a new way of working together and of sharing responsibility. And I would like to underline that the effectiveness of PECH indeed depends very much on its responsible and full implementation by all EU importers and Member States' competent authorities. And it is clear that, as for any new IT system, PECH has also presented some challenges in the initial period for all parties involved. We have to acknowledge this, and we do acknowledge this. But we also acknowledge the significant adjustment efforts deployed by national administration and operators, and most of the issues that have been raised at the beginning have actually been addressed or are being addressed. So I would like to explain briefly what the Commission is doing to address these challenges and to help operators and member states. On the Commission side, we have deployed all efforts to assist member states, third countries and operators in this important transition. So what does this mean in practice? The Commission continues to monitor closely the uptake of PECH and to guide member states in its harmonised implementation. Initial technical challenges with PECH have been addressed, and new functionalities in the IT system are progressively added to the application based on our collective experience. The Commission facilitates the implementation of PECH and regularly adjusts PECH based on user experience. Initial technical challenges with PECH have been addressed, and new functionalities and improvements are progressively added to the system. And since the system went live in January this year, already 9 new releases with significant improvements have already been deployed, and new ones are in the pipeline. So just to say, it's an ongoing process. In addition to substantial training material and guidelines available online, there are regular bilateral exchanges as well as with all member states, such as the last IUU working group meeting that took place only recently in Brussels in June. And in addition, temporary flexibility arrangements have been put in place for new data fields in the PECH certificate and for the use of special templates that were agreed in the past with 7 non-EU countries. And this flexibility has now been extended until the end of November. So talking about non-EU countries, which is also very important to explain, the Commission worked very hard over the past 2 years to familiarise non-EU countries with the amended IUU regulation. We have reinforced our outreach strategy to non-EU countries and have regular exchanges with individual countries, but we are also organising physical trainings with the competent authority and regional on-the-spot workshops, just to give a couple of examples. Our priority is to promote the interoperability between PECH and IT systems of non-EU countries, or a direct use of PECH where non-EU countries have no IT system in place. To date, interoperability has been established with 6 countries: Norway, Iceland, Faroe Islands, New Zealand, Greenland and the UK. And today, 40% of the import declarations concerning imports from the top 15 supplier countries are based on interoperability documents. This accounts for no less than 30% of all importer declarations. Work on interoperability is ongoing with several other countries, while for direct use, 8 countries have been granted access to PECH and 2 more are considering to start using it soon. So it keeps pace. So let me stress that all these efforts aim to facilitate the phase-in period of PECH implementation and to progressively reduce the administrative burden for EU operators and authorities. And we are committed to make PECH work, and we are on the right track. So maybe also one word what member states could do to support these efforts. I said earlier that as an EU-wide system, a new EU-wide system always implies a new way of working together and a new way of sharing responsibility. So in terms of what member states can do to ensure the level playing among EU importers and to ensure that effectiveness of the system in protecting our market from IUU products, it is crucial that all member states' competent authorities ensure that the mandatory use of PECH by EU operators and ensure the proper checks of data submitted before authorising the imports. This is really crucial in order to avoid knock-on effects for other EU importers and other member state competent authorities. Verification requests and, if necessary, refusals need also to be done by member states when data, which was requested since 2010 by the EU regulation, are still not correctly provided by non-EU countries. To conclude, let me say that we believe that there are no real blocking points in PECH that would make imports of fishery products impossible. And I think this is an important message I would like to pass. This has been proven by those member states that have already fully implemented the requirements for the compulsory use of PECH. The first, let's call them teething challenges, have been addressed and are still being addressed. And this in spite of the fact, I have to say, that resources available for this important objective remain limited compared to the size of the challenges. Moreover, catch has already proved itself as a game changer, with third country exports of fish stemming from IUU fishing being identified and blocked by member states or authorities. Catch introduces a new way of working together where responsibility is shared and each actor across the seafood value chain takes responsibility in the fight against IUU fishing and must contribute to make catch a success. And making catch a success is really a matter of living up to our reputation and of preserving the credibility of our strong IUU system. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Now I'll give the floor to Mrs. Kalnek. The floor is yours for 2 minutes, please.
Oui, merci, Président. Merci.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for that useful input on the catch system, which is compulsory for fisheries products imports exports since January last. It's a welcome progress on combating IUU fishing, particularly for seafood products, over 70% of our production. But I think there are still some very specific difficulties. I'm going to mention just 3 of them. All vessels are not referencing catch, particularly small fishing units which don't belong to a producer organisation. And the outcome of that is that some companies cannot obtain catch certificates, which means that they have no outlets. Now, batches that come from several vessels, when they bring together catches from dozens of vessels, which is standard for coastal fisheries, they have to collect all those individual certificates. And so the administrative burden is disproportionate and threatens the existence of small-scale fishing. Catch so far doesn't take account of those complex flows which involve various different intermediaries. And then thirdly, the delegation of signature. In order to simplify administrative approaches, owners of vessels should be able to delegate the signature of the certificate to the producer organisation, particularly when they don't have the human resources to do it themselves. Now, that is something which is still not up and running in the instrument. And so my questions are of the Commission. Are you planning simplification measures for doing the exhaustively cover all vessels, also on the single certificate for a multi-vessel batch, and then the delegation of signatures? Thank you for that response, which is of interest both to Member States and to the players in the field. Thank you.
Or to Mr. Rodrigues. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Começo por agradecer a apresentação da representante da Comissão.
Now, let me start by thanking the representative of the Commission. Fighting IUU is an objective that we all share. Here in the Fisheries Committee, we have been active for a very long time for that goal. And of course, it's not automatically that we have good results, and not all policies are implemented. And it's quite true that we have member states who have critical points of view about the system. We've talked about importers and fishermen who've complained that the system doesn't really reflect reality when it's implemented. And there have been many times when we've seen a lot of things actually blocked because the IT system isn't working well, and then money is simply lost. So I have a question. Does the Commission recognize these problems? Do they recognize the deficiencies? Can they see what the difficulties are? And are they prepared to take measures for this and extend the transitional period as long as these technical problems haven't been solved?
Mr. Milan Mon, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Well, actually, I've been getting contradictory information about the catch system, but I just listened to Ms. Pricing, and she thinks that after some initial teething problems, They have been addressed, I think is what she said, and things are now working quite well. But then we heard talk of flexibility through to November. I'll come back to that, but that's the Commission's version. Maybe I should have listened more carefully, because she went into a lot of detail and I didn't manage to follow them completely. But then there are complaints coming from the sector. You're probably aware, but on Sunday, the Financial Times, not just any old newspaper, published an article on this matter. And as we all know, this system came into force in January. It's been up and running for over 6 months now. And I do fully share the objective of this, which is to enforce traceability, combat IUU and illegal imports. But the sector continues to complain and encountering difficulties, although generally speaking, it recognises that things are going better, or at least less badly. So a lot of it continues to be manual. You have to enter information several times. But from the information I've received, the complaints from Galicia, for example, I sent in a written question of the Commission on this. But the main problem seems to be the limited access or involvement of third countries to this. Most of these certificates are still dealt with in PDF or paper, and digitalisation really is slowing down, driving up costs, etc. But the Financial Times, picking up on this, said that, yeah, I understand that a flexibility period has been accepted through to November for certain products coming from the United States, or, as the Financial Times says, it's been extended to Norway, Iceland, Faroe Islands, South Africa, amongst others. Now, have they got that wrong? I don't know, because basically I thought it was for the United States and maybe a couple more, but they talk about Canada, Norway, etc. And thinking of Norway, Iceland, I don't think we've got a problem there, have we? They've got such a lengthy exporting tradition. So I don't really understand, and I haven't understood whether this flexibility granted to the United States is extended to these countries or not. So if there are problems with Canada, New Zealand, Iceland, Norway, what is happening with China, Vietnam or Mauritania? Just a simple question. You know, these ones are closer. Digitalisation, well, Norway is a main exporter. So maybe you could draw a distinction there. I got a little bit mixed up, but can you tell us where we stand with these different countries? Now, in my country, we have one of the biggest ports for fish imports in Europe, and they're looking at this introduction of catch involving the third countries. I don't know whether you're in contact with Consumat. If not, I think you should be. But that is something that we still have a lot of work to do. There are difficulties, and this article from the Financial Times is alarming, to say the least.
Mr. Bayada, the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you to the Commission. I won't be very long. I think this is a very important tool to help us fight IUU fishing, but it can be a very good and important tool if it works very well for everyone. So my question is going to be very blunt and very easy. How is the uptake working with our neighbours in the Mediterranean, especially when it comes to third countries that are catching fish, which we are sharing with them, and then exporting them to the EU without correct verification of their status as IUU fishing or non-sustainable fishing? Thank you.
Thank you so much. If there is no more interventions, I'll make one of my own and I'll speak in Portuguese. Agradecer a intervenção e a apresentação por parte.
Now, first of all, thank you very much to the Commission. More than 80% of fish is imported, and 20% of the global catch is part of that EU import. And of course, this instrument is very important, but it involves quite a bureaucratic burden, both for the operators and for the fishermen. And so these points have been raised, and Catch and Practice, which is a really recently released study from a multidisciplinary task force, pointed out some of the problems in the implementation. There's no interoperability with the catches concerning the national systems or the systems from third countries. And as stated, you have to issue, in many cases, manual certificates, and of course that increases the bureaucratic burden even more. So there's also a situation where you could have a 50-minute delay, and that's really unimaginable in business terms. And then there are problems with validation, and there's problems with the collection of data in various databases. And some of the representative organizations for fishermen in Europe, some of the prominent organizations have taken a common step that the obligation of control of the control system, that it would be obligatory for all catches, starting with 0 kilos, and they don't think that it's possible to really carry out in reality, especially in smaller fisheries and with those dimensions. Also, there's a question of legal certainty for the operators. So there have been really a lot of complaints, there have been a lot of difficulties. And this would mean that there's really no more notion of commercial confidentiality on behalf of the operators. So there's also this article from the Financial Times that has been cited, 6,000-ton limits at the Netherlands, and for 2 weeks we were waiting for the validation of the documents. And then there's also the delegated powers in this area, and some of us can't quite understand what is intended there. So 2 concrete questions for the representative of the Commission. What about intermediate validation of catch IT for all operators so that they could use this important instrument? And to what extent are you working together with third countries in order to avoid complications? Because there's quite a lot that's freely moving throughout the EU, so you don't have control shopping. Some places the controls are less rigorous. And so how is it going to be possible for the third countries to more efficiently use this system? So now the Commission has the opportunity to respond to all these questions.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will try to reply to your questions. I'm here with my colleagues who are experts on the file who may complement with more technical details if necessary. I would first like to thank the speakers for acknowledging that progress is being made and for acknowledging that, as every new IT system, there are challenges at the beginning, but I would also like to underline that from really the very regular and permanent contacts we are having with member states, with operators. We had a meeting with the Market Advisory Council very recently, and they all acknowledge that progress is being made, and I can be a bit more explicit also on the type of progress we are making. There have been a couple of interventions. Madame Le Callennec, I was not entirely sure if you were referring to imports or exports, and there were also a couple of overlaps with the control regulation, so I will try to give you some feedback and some examples, and you will let me know if this replied to your question or not. Just on the countries with whom we are working on more interoperability, maybe just to say that, as I said, this is Morocco, Japan, and Maldives are the most advanced ones, while for direct use, the 8 countries that have been granted access to catch are Papua New Guinea, Uruguay, Mauritius, Venezuela, Egypt, Seychelles, Ukraine, and Philippines, and 2 more are starting work very soon. So just I wanted to add this to the information I provided you in the first part. Then also in terms of explaining a bit the kind of improvements we are doing while working with member states experts since January. So I was saying catch is undergoing continuous development through successive releases aimed at correcting identified issues and enhancing its functionalities. So, for example, while planned improvements will include also some further flexibility for amendments, so corrections of data in catch, it will nevertheless remain of utmost importance that data from paper documents are correctly entered into catch by EU operators, and that member states' authorities ensure that operators are aware of these requirements. We're also exploring the possibilities of using AI tools for automated uploading of data into catch and development of functionalities to enable member states' authorities to introduce automated alerts applicable at national level. These are just a couple of examples of what we're doing and what the improvements are, but I would like to spend a few seconds on a cluster of questions you have raised and which I think are related to the third countries with whom we had agreed records in the past, and I think it's worth to clarify a bit the situation. So indeed, we have received requests to prolong the flexibility for all templates used by these countries with former administrative agreements, the so-called agreed record countries, in order to ease for the EU industry the import of certain species. And this was also reiterated by some organizations in the recent meeting of the Market Advisory Council, to which I already referred. Just would like to recall that member states and third countries' authorities were informed on various occasions and through different channels of the amendments of the IUU regulation almost 2 years before the application of the revised catch certificate templates and before the obligatory use of catch for EU importers and EU authorities kicked off in January this year. So in a way, we considered that these 2 years were sufficient time to allow everybody to prepare the industry and adapt for the initial application date of 10th of January. And in the way we are reacting to the different requests, I would like to stress the importance of 2 principles. The first is the non-discriminatory principle, and the other one is flexibility. So on the non-discriminatory principle, it is important that the rules are applied in a non-discriminatory manner towards all non-EU countries exporting to the EU. The Commission therefore has no intentions of excluding certain fisheries, for example, where catches are aggregated before processing, from providing the data required in the catch certificate. So non-discrimination, I think, is very important in this context. Derogations from the new catch certificate will be detrimental to the objectives of the IUU regulation. I think this has to be clear for everybody because the new catch IT system and the new IUU regulation responds to requests for a stronger level playing field. And to recall what I said in the introduction maybe, and to recall that it was the European Court of Auditors in 2022 and also this Parliament and also the sector and member states themselves who had called for this much needed harmonization of import controls in our system. The second principle, which is very important and which we do apply, is flexibility. And this refers a bit to the article the Honourable Member Mianmon and others cited. And I would like to say that the Commission has listened carefully to the EU industry, to the operators, including the Market Advisory Council, with whom we are meeting on regular and permanent basis, and whom we are in close contact both at DG and at Commissioner level, and who have drawn our attention to possible supply issues this summer and in early autumn, namely as regards particularly white salmon and Alaska lobster. So this is probably the case you're referring to. And the Commission has therefore decided to prolong one final time the temporary flexibilities granted at the beginning of catch implementation to the US and to all the other 6 former agreed record countries. This will allow submission into catch of their old templates up and including to 30th of November of this year. And to systematically level the playing field for EU operators through consistent use of catch, these flexibilities will end after 30th November 2026. So maybe just to wrap up and to say one final word, we believe that catch is not the problem but the solution. And we already see now how member states are starting to cooperate in a different way than before, as they are dependent on each other and on what they accept in catch, and that influences the work of competent authorities in other member states. And with the use of catch, the other authorities know who is not doing it properly, and this will inevitably harmonise the controls between member states. So we appreciate that all the work is not tangible yet to the operators, as catch has only been in force for 6 months now, but catch is here to stay. And to make catch a success, we must continue to work hand in hand under the current legal framework in the spirit of shared responsibility between the operators and competent authorities in member states and non-EU countries and the Commission. And maybe on the questions on particular member states or third countries, maybe I can ask my colleagues briefly to intervene and to give clarity.
Would you like to add something?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that in relation to the flexibility on the agreed record, so even if you could say it's a non-discriminatory application, of course the countries who have already established their own interoperability with catch and are providing all the full information that is necessary, they are not going to reverse their systems back to not providing this information. But for the US and for Canada, it might be helpful for these months, but it's also just an opportunity that everyone is treated the same way. So if Iceland would need to issue an old certificate, or the Faroe Islands, they could also do that. So that is just to clarify the non-discrimination part.
And just to add that there is another segment of flexibility which applies to newly required data in the CAT certificates. And this one has been given to all flag states. It's not only limited to agreed records countries. So that part applies to everyone, and the deadline is the same as for the agreed record templates, which means up to and until 30th of November.
Thank you. So if there is no further questions, I would like to thank the Commission, and this is the closing of this point. Thank you. And then we will move on to point number 8 on the agenda, which is the general budget of the European Union for the financial year 2027. And this point is the consideration of the draft opinion on the budget of next year. And as you know, the European Parliament is the budgetary authority of the Union on an equal footing with the Council. It is involved in the budgetary process from the preparation stage, laying down the general guidelines and the type of spending. It adopts the budget and monitors its implementation. It gives a discharge on the implementation of the budget. This is why this procedure is very relevant for our committee. Mr. Giuseppe Lupi is the rapporteur for the PECH opinion on the 2027 general budget. So I will now give the floor to Mr. Lupi to present his draft opinion. Mr. Lupi, the floor is yours.
Grazie, Presidente, colleghi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, as we know, fisheries, agriculture, processing of products are a strategic priority for the EU. It's an important sector in terms of food security, protection of marine ecosystems, for the economy, social cohesion of insular and coastal states, also for food sovereignty in Europe. According to Commission estimates in 2017, the budget line for fisheries for 2027 will be up to about 1,016 million euros. So it's a major commitment with an increase of 2.1% over 2026 and over 1 billion in payment appropriations, with an increase of 10.7% over the preceding year. And so we welcome these increases, but nonetheless we believe that the resources should be used efficiently in order to meet the specific needs of the sector. The collection of scientific data, protection of biodiversity, decarbonisation, support for aquaculture and for coastal and insular states. So we're calling for simplification in access to EMFA resources, which are too scarce often for fishers, and very often they encounter obstacles which stand in the way of use of funding. Simplification doesn't mean reducing controls, but allowing these resources to reach the beneficiaries in useful time. And we should pay particular attention, I believe, to coastal and artisanal fishing, which continues to be crucial to economic and social issues in coastal and insular communities in Europe. At the same time, we need to invest in safety for fishers, generational renewal through training, incentives for the setting up of activities, instruments which will facilitate access to fishing and aquaculture for young people and women. And finally, we're calling for rapid, flexible intervention in cases of climate or environmental crisis, the heating of the seas, pollution. These, as we know, are creating serious consequences, particularly in the Mediterranean and for the islands. I'm thinking in particular of Sicily and Sardinia, the cases I know best. The European Oceans Pact, island strategies and those for coastal communities are interesting initiatives taken by the European Commission, but we believe that they need to be backed up by specific resources through the plans to involve fisherfolk, local authorities and the scientific community. To conclude, this will be, as we well know, the next budget before the last budget before the next MFF 2028 to 34. And as we know, the architecture of the budget proposed by the Commission will go beyond MFAF and will bring together funds for fisheries and agriculture in a single fund. We're not happy with that because we don't feel it allows for certainty and recognisability of produce. Now, we've seen an increase from 2 to 4 billion euros under the previous presidency, but the Parliament is asking for 7.3 billion. We need adequate resources for this sector, which is of strategic importance to our economy and for food security. And we hope that the Irish presidency will welcome the Parliament's position. I wish Ms. Pricing the very best in her work, and I'm sure that despite the tight time limits, we will manage to coordinate correctly with the other rapporteurs. Thank you.
Thank you to the rapporteur, and I will now give the floor to the shadow rapporteurs and to any members that would like to speak. And we will start with Mr. Falconi and the EPP Group.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to speak in Italian. Desidero innanzitutto
I would like to start by thanking the rapporteur, Mr. Lupo, for his work, which has just been presented. Now, certainly there are elements that we would share and support, and we believe it does represent a good starting point. In the EPP, however, we feel that there are still certain aspects which need to be strengthened further through the presentation of various amendments. In particular, we will try to focus more on competitiveness and resilience in the fisheries and aquaculture sector to ensure that environmental sustainability will always go hand in hand with economic and social sustainability for our companies. We think it's crucial to value the strategic role of MFAF. The rapporteur has already said this. And in the future MFF, we have to support investment innovation, decarbonisation, and we also need to renew the fleet, at the same time simplifying access to finances, particularly for SMEs and for artisanal fishing. We would also like to have a stronger reference to the specific situation of the Mediterranean, the islands such as Sicily, Sardinia, as was well said by the rapporteur, but obviously the specific features of other islands as well, Cyprus, Corsica, Malta, and so on and so forth. These islands, we believe, face particular challenges and therefore require instruments and resources on an appropriate level. In the same way, we also feel it's crucial to stress the principle of reciprocity in terms of imports. It's something we've already discussed today, so that our operators receive a guarantee of fair competition. So we hope that as we move forward, we will have a constructive discussion of our amendments with a common aim of adopting a text which is even more incisive, better balanced, and can meet all of the needs of the sectors of fisheries and aquaculture.
Thank you. Then we will move on to ECR, Mr. Rusen, who is not here, so I wonder if there is anyone who would like to speak on behalf of the ECR group. Doesn't seem to be anyone present, so then we will move on to Renew, and the shadow rapporteur is Ms. Wiesner, but will be replaced by Mr. Christensen. Please.
Thank you, and on Danish. Thank
you very much to the rapporteur for his opinion. We think this is an excellent basis. We think that you've covered many of the important messages that we think should be sent from this committee. Messages such that fisheries and aquaculture's strategic role, the emphasis, important role in sustainable development of fisheries and aquaculture, and this focus on investment and innovation, absolutely necessary to improve fisheries management and ensure that it's even more sustainable fisheries. We'd also like to emphasize the necessity of supporting small-scale fisheries, and we should not forget that you have to provide enough support also for ensuring more CO2-friendly catches. We should have better access to EU financing, especially those who are coming from the smaller segments of fisheries. We would also like to emphasize the importance of having good competitive conditions. And we'd also like to express our expectations on the coming Oceans Act and the need for this legislative proposal to have a holistic approach to the ocean's resources. So let me thank the rapporteur for an excellent basis for future cooperation so we can work for a good basis after the summer holiday.
Thank you. Then we move to the Green Group, and the shadow rapporteur is Ms. Nordqvist, but he is replaced by Ms. Levin. Please, Isabella.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you very much to the rapporteur for this draft report. On behalf of Rasmus Nordqvist, who is the shadow, I'd like to underline that we support many of the contents of this report, but we want to also reinforce certain elements. Of course, we want to see an economically and socially sustainable fisheries policy and sector, but the basis for that is, in fact, that we have a regenerative economy, because our oceans are, in fact, overfished still, which they shouldn't be, so we need to turn this vicious circle around. And we are proposing an amendment just to add the word regenerative and equitable blue economy that develops within planetary boundaries, because this is really essential for a socially and economically sustainable and future-oriented sector. Then when it comes to modernization and or renewal of vessels, this is a tricky one because we have the WTO agreement saying that we should not contribute in any way with subsidies that contributes to overfishing, and we still don't have the fleets in balance. So we have overcapacity with our fleets. So we are proposing an amendment saying under specific conditions linked to a just transition away from fossil fuels and from destructive fishing activities and limited to fleet segments that are in balance with available fishing opportunities. Just to specify that, we will try to get it in previously also. I think that's really important to be in line also with WTO rules. When it comes to aquaculture, we also want to add low carbon and low trophic because this is also something that goes in the line of regenerative blue economy. And the deployment of propulsion systems for different fleet segments, we want to specify that they need to be low and zero emission propulsion systems. Of course, because also the fishing sector needs to comply with our climate targets, and it's important to underline that. And to get away from our dependency on fossil fuels, which is a big problem for the fishing sector, as you all know. So those are the amendments, and we hope that we can work together with all the other groups to have a good final text. Thank you.
Thank you. The left has no speakers, so then I open up for other members who wish to take the floor, and I have Le Kalenek on the speakers list, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the rapporteur. According to the Commission's estimates for 2027, financial support for fisheries is up over 2026, which would mean that the funds are being used properly. MFAF, Sustainable Fisheries Agreements, regional organisations, and the European Control Agency. So the support is up by about 2.1% in commitment appropriations and 10.7% for payment appropriations. Now, to be in direct contact with people using MFAF or other European funds, I would stress to the Commission that it really needs to simplify, to rationalise and facilitate access to funding, particularly for SMEs, artisanal fishers, agriculture producers and producer organisations. I'm thinking of a very specific example currently entered by an association from my region, which is calling for European funds. And I was taking a look at the file. I hope that all of the conditions which are required to be eligible for the funds will not penalise their project, because it really is moving towards sustainable fisheries and shared governance. Now, our colleague's opinion stresses the need to have scientific data, including social, environmental and economic data related to the seas, to strengthen sustainable fisheries. Regularly, we all have meetings with scientists. I was in Brest last Friday, a meeting with Inframer, which is a French institute recognised in Europe and throughout the world. And they alerted me to the need to continue to invest in collecting, monitoring and analysing data with a renewed fleet and technology which is adapted to climate change. And finally, as I was reminding the Irish presidency just a little bit earlier, it's crucial that we evaluate MFAF in order to change the rules in favour of fleets and gear and make them more selective. It's absolutely crucial. We can't complain about the impact of climate regulations without helping the profession to financially support the necessary transition. Hence our insistence that fisheries should have a decent budget for 2027 through to 34. So I have a very straightforward question of the Commission. When will we have the evaluation of MFAF? Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other member asking for the floor, so I will ask the Commission if you would like to comment and take the floor. So I give the word to Carmen Prising from DG Mare, and you have the floor for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I would like to thank the Honourable Member, Mr. Lupo, for the draft opinion, which I understand you will now collect the amendments to it and then adopt it in the committee. Just to give a little bit of context before I'm coming to the very concrete question of Madame Le Callennec, just to recall that the budget we're talking about here, 2027, is the last year of the MFF. It's not the last spending year, but the last year of the financing period. And also to recall that the midterm revision of the MFF has led to substantial cuts in commitment appropriations over the period 2025-2027. And to recall that actually the budget for 2027, the amount available for commitments is by 36 million lower than we had it in the original MFF planning, so due to the midterm review, just to put into context. But 2027 will not be the last spending year, of course. Due to the N+3 rule, we will still be able to spend money until 2030. So in terms of spending, we are not at the end, but rather halfway, and maybe also to give you the information and to confirm what some members also said, that in terms of implementation, the MFAF for the period 2021-2027 is broadly on track, with all national programs adopted and implementation advancing across shared, direct and indirect management. Commitments are well advanced, while payments and actual expenditure remain at a more moderate level, but which is perfectly normal for this stage in the cycle. Absorption is progressing. For shared management, the implementation rate is at an average of 30%, 1/3, total of net payments, which is slightly better than for example, the RDF or the European Social Fund. But also to mention that absorption remains very uneven across member states. For example, an implementation rate of 36% for Austria, 20% for Germany, Latvia and Sweden currently, and only 1.5%, for example, in Slovakia, Romania and Hungary. Also, briefly to mention that the previous fund, the EMFF, for 2014-2020, the programs have now reached a closure. So therefore, no payment appropriations are requested for the EMFF programs in 2026, just as an addition of information. Coming to the very concrete question of Madame Le Callennec on the evaluation of the review of the MFAF regulation. So as you know, we have launched a call for evidence in view of a possible targeted amendment of the MFAF regulation to take into account specifically experience gained in the implementation phase so far and feedback we have received from member states and stakeholders. The call for evidence was launched on the 23rd of June and is still open until the 21st of July. And it aims to collect input for a possible amendment of the MFAF regulation to make it notably more accessible, flexible and easier to implement for member states so that it can support more effectively policy areas mentioned also in your priorities, Mr. Lupo, like small-scale fisheries and generational renewal and the energy transition. And, of course, also to mention, in addition, there's also the need to introduce certain changes to the MFAF regulation to ensure the full implementation with the WTO agreement on fisheries subsidies. So a targeted amendment should increase flexibility for member states and reduce the burden on beneficiaries so that they can make better use of the MFAF opportunities for the remaining period of the programming period. I will not go into detail of all the priorities you have raised. For funding priorities, you raise many topics from aquaculture, coastal communities, data collection, energy transition, etc. Just because this part moves already into the discussions on the next financial framework, I would just like to end by recalling that the proposal for the new MFF 2028-2034, as proposed by the Commission, and of which the general structure has been preserved in the partial general approaches of the Council, aims at making the budget notably more integrated, flexible and impactful, and to fully tap into the potential of synergies and across funds. And I think this is particularly important for many of the policy priorities you have mentioned also in your opinion, notably energy transition, generational renewal and aquaculture, which would particularly be able to benefit from these increased synergies. And finally, a more flexible budget will also allow the Union to act fast when circumstances change, so in moments of crisis. And this is also something you stress in your opinion, the need to ensure quick funding when faced with climate, environmental or market crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you to the Commission. And Le Kalinek, please.
Oui, thank you, Madam Chair. Juste une question.
A quick question. You talked about the implementation rate for MFAF, and you gave some examples in some countries. You didn't mention France, so very selfishly, could I ask you whether you have the implementation rate for France for MFAF? Which we didn't win in the football last night, as you all know, but I hope that they are correctly using the funds.
Please, Commissioner.
In terms of reimbursement from the EU budget, France is at 40.2%.
Thank you. And then we will move back to the rapporteur, Mr. Lupo, to conclude this debate. Please.
Sì, grazie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleagues. I listened carefully and took note of the comments made by the rapporteurs from the other groups, the colleagues who've spoken. So I'd like to thank Mr. Falcone, who raised some issues I can fully agree with on the need to link economic, social, environmental sustainability to the question of competitiveness, with particular reference to aquaculture, then innovation, renewal, aspects which were raised by other colleagues as well, such as Mr. Christensen, with reference to the questions of investment and innovation. The strategic role of fisheries and aquaculture that was something I stressed particularly during my introduction, as well as small-scale fishing and the reference to the Oceans Acts. And I'd like to thank my colleagues for the work they've done. We heard that there's going to be some amendments on the regenerating economy, which is very interesting. And yes, it's true. We have to also encourage fleet renewal in technological terms as well. We've seen, for example, that if you have technical innovation, sonars, this type of thing on board, it can also improve fishing selectivity, and therefore the environmental impact can be improved as well. Obviously, this all requires resources which have to be made available to our fishers by making correct use of EU funds. Decarbonisation certainly is a crucial objective, and Ms. Le Kalinek also raised some important aspects with reference to the need always to work towards strengthening the scientific approach and observation, data collection, careful analysis of data as well, to observe and understand in depth what are the changes coming about in our seas and oceans. The director of DG Mare also added some very important aspects. And with this, I turn to the Presidency. It would be very interesting to understand what happened with MFAF for the different member states between 2021 to 2027, because that could help us, I think, for the upcoming MFF for 28 through to 34. So thank you to everyone for their work, and I'm sure we're going to continue to work together to achieve the best possible result. Thank you.
Thank you to Mr. Lupo. So the deadline for amendments for the opinion for 16th of July 2026 at 12:00. And the deadline for budgetary amendments 24th of August at 12:00. And then I would like to remind you that we will vote on an opinion on the 1st of September 2026 in order to be able to respect the very tight timetable that the Budget Committee has. So this item is closed, and this will end this part of today's committee meeting. So I would like to wish you all a very nice summer. Thank you.